welcome anybody who's listening today. This is our first podcast for the Julie Rowe Show. I'm going to start in a rather simple interview fashion. I've got my friend Eric on the line, and he is helping me with these podcasts as we go forward. So I appreciate those who are listening and your patience as we try to figure this out. This is very much out of my comfort zone, but I have felt like it was important as we get closer to things coming. Just really feeling strongly that I needed to be a stronger voice of warning and make myself more available with this message so that we can reach as many people as possible in serving as a voice of warning, voice of testimony, witness, and truth. So having said that, I just wanted to, again, thank you for joining us. Encourage you to share this with your friends and family members that might have interest in this message. And I think we'll just turn the time over to you, Eric. We'll start, the format for these that we're coming up with so far is I have requested of those that interview me that I do not know what the questions are beforehand. I feel like I do better with more of an impromptu, on the spot, off the cuff, so that I can have, if you will, live stream from the other side as far as the Spirit guiding me in what I'll say. So keep that in mind. I do not know what questions are coming my way. The interviewer or interviewers that we have going forward on these podcasts will prepare questions that they find of interest, and we'll try to stay within a certain theme or topic. But if there's any straying from that, it's because we are following the Spirit on this, and we're just going with where the conversation goes. I want it to be as natural as possible. And so with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Eric Smith.
Sounds great. Thanks, Julie. So in the time that I've watched you and followed your story over the last couple of years, I've become interested in the topic of the Wasatch Wakeup. And you were on Brian Hyde's radio talk show on May 5th of 2016, so just over a year ago. And that was when I really first started hearing that phrase, Wasatch Wakeup. And so I wanted to ask you where that phrase came from and just say anything you want to about that event.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. That's a great question. The term Wasatch Wakeup is one that I coined. It has since picked up momentum in the last year or so. That is a phrase that was given to me in both dream and vision from the other side of the veil. And what I mean by that is that I first heard and saw that in a night vision, and then during the day was reminded of that and had some other day visions regarding the Wasatch Wakeup, or this first earthquake that will be a wake-up call centered in the city of Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I can't take credit for that catchy phrase. It was one given to me from those on the other side of the veil, and specifically, I believe, directly from the Lord through his messengers, letting me know that we have some things that are coming in the very near future. That Brian Hyde show last year was the first time I was given permission to use that term on a broad scale, and it was to have an impact on the audience and to those that might be hearing about this earthquake that's coming or will come or has come. And so that radio show that I did with Brian was the first one I did with him. I did another one in November of 2016. And the Wasatch Wakeup, I also typed up a couple of blog entries on my blog, julieroweprepare.com, and you can see what I typed up there at julieroweprepare.com on my blog section. There are two blogs that I typed there, one called What is the Wasatch Wakeup? And the other one I think is titled The Wasatch Wakeup. You can look those up. They're from April of 2016. I encourage anybody who's listening to this to go to my blog at julieroweprepare.com and read my own words from my own personal account, and not what's been spread around as rumors on the internet with Facebook and other forums and stuff online. There are a lot of rumors that have gone on about my message, about my story, my background, my life, my health issues, and what I say, I look forward to doing some podcasts to dispel some of those rumors and to let people hear my own voice and to I have often said in the last couple of years, having gone public with my story starting in May of 2014 when my first book came out, A Greater Tomorrow. That came out in May 14th of 2014. And the second one, A Time Is Now, came out in November of 2014. My third book, From Tragedy to Destiny, came out in March of 2016. And I am getting ready to publish a fourth book. I don't have a release date on that yet, but Eric is the author of that book. He helped write that, and that is who is interviewing me today, and that is my biography. This is the first announcement I have going public that a book is coming out. And so having now gone through 4 books, the fourth book's going to be published, being in the limelight or public spotlight now for 3 years, and dealing with a lot of energy coming my way, and a lot of interesting experience that I had with interactions with people. I am finding more and more that the more vocal I get, the stronger I am, and the more bold that I get with this message, the more opposition there is, and the more false rumors and other personal attacks have come. So there are a lot of reasons why we're doing these podcasts, and one of them is to start in my announcement or understanding or clarification on the Wasatch Wakeup, as well as various topics as we go forward, to address some of the things that I couldn't address in the books, or to go into more detail on things that I couldn't write due to limited time constraints, or not having the clarity at the time, or just feeling like we need to keep the book at a certain level or length, and feeling like I can say things often much more clearly than I can when I write them. I like that in doing these podcasts, I can have whoever might be interested in listening, the audience, hear my voice and hear the authenticity in this message, know that I'm not making this stuff up, that there's no way I'm this creative. And while those who oppose this message and are against me putting word out are doing everything they can to discredit me, I do want to witness and testify that I know the Wasatch Wakeup is real, and I am not the one that came up with that. I am not the one that caused that or will cause that, and I'm not the one that has given words to my mind and my heart to speak to whatever audience decides to listen. And I stand by that with every message I've given, whether it's a radio show, a podcast, a book, and anything I have personally written on my blog, on my website, or anywhere else on the internet. I stand by those words. I do not back down from them, and I know why I wrote them or why I've said them. Just because I don't explain them doesn't mean that they're not correct or that I have changed my story. I don't always have all the details correctly because I can only give what I know at the time. And my understanding 3 years ago is a lot different than what my understanding is today. My understanding a year ago is much different than it is today. A year ago, I didn't know when the earthquake was going to be. I still don't exactly know when the earthquake's going to be. But I was given the words to speak on Brian Hyde's show a year ago, and I felt an extreme urgency in that message. And I was specifically told by the Lord, or from his messengers on the other side of the veil, primarily John, who I talk about in my book, and I'll talk more about him later on. We could have an entire podcast just on my relationship and friendship with John, who is a distant ancestor of mine that is mentioned in my first 3 books.
And John is still active in your life?
Yes, very much so. And so, and we'll address that on a different podcast, Eric, okay? Because that's a whole other topic. But one of the many reasons I can do this work, and I feel so strongly about it, is because I know without a doubt that the Lord's hand is behind this message. And the more involved I get in it, the more I see that, the more clear it becomes, and the more determined I am to speak boldly and speak and testify of the Savior Jesus Christ and of his mission, which is the gathering of his children home, of the Lord's children home, our Father in heaven. And as one of his messengers, I made a commitment premortally and again many times while here on this earth, especially in the last almost 13 years now. It will be 13 years on September 28th and 29th that I had my NDE that I talk about in my books. And I've had a lot of time to think about this. This is not something that you just jump into without knowing what you're getting involved in. I didn't entirely know everything, but I was pretty well prepared from those on the other side through personal revelation, dreams, vision, and sometimes visitations from those on the other side, that I signed up for this premortally. I agreed to it, and at any point in time, I have agency, and I can leave, I can quit. I can stop, and I can say, I'm done, I'm not doing any more of this. But in my heart of hearts, I know that the Lord loves his children. I love my brothers and sisters, and I would never be able to live with myself if I did not do everything in my power to be able to warn and testify and witness to bring as many people back to Christ as possible and to save as many lives as possible, whether that's spiritually or temporally speaking. And that includes the Wasatch Wakeup. So I did get a bad rap last summer, and I knew that I would. It came as no surprise to me. If someone's going to claim that they have spiritual gifts of dream and vision and being able to see anything past, present, or future, which is my claim and which I stand boldly by, then it is common sense that someone would know that they would be shown at least a portion of how they're going to be treated for doing so and for saying such a thing. That is no small claim. It's going to ruffle feathers. It's going to make some people mad. It's going to make some people uncomfortable. It's going to make some people afraid. And they're going to think I'm a freak, and they're going to call me crazy. And then coupled with some of the health issues I have, I don't blame people one bit for not believing my story. But what I would ask is that you go to my website, you read my books before you criticize, and find out for yourself from the actual source, rather than listening to rumors and gossip and negative things from those on the internet or in your neighborhoods or families, because that's what I would hope for anyone who is seeking truth. And that's not because I necessarily have an invested interest in somebody listening or following my words. It's because I think that's how we avoid deception. And I don't believe everything I read on the internet, and no one else should either. The Wasatch Wakeup, Eric, you remember that last year, that radio show. I think it'd be interesting to hear your perceptions of what was going on, in the world at that time, what was going on in Utah at that time, or Idaho, or some of the western states where some of this Wasatch earthquake is going to affect more people in grand scale. But what do you remember about a year ago?
Well, I was a little more active in social media back then than I am now, but I was on some social media groups who were talking about events that were coming. There, at that time, there was a lot of excitement, and that might be the wrong word to use, but just a lot of anticipation and thinking about things that might happen. And that earthquake had been mentioned, and I remember after your radio show with Brian that the social media websites just started buzzing, and there was a lot of talk. Oh, did you hear what she said? And you were so descriptive in that earthquake. I knew as you were talking that you were describing the events that would happen. It would be a certain time in the morning, and you saw snow and grass, and you were so descriptive. And I was just thinking, you don't just make this stuff up. And so I really believed that you had been shown that. Anyway, then I got real excited. I was watching, and I really felt like I would see that event in the next couple weeks. And it didn't happen just like that. And for a little while, I started getting a little shaky, thinking, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know. But I held my convictions that I knew that you had seen what you said you saw. Mm-hmm. And I just had to put it on a shelf for a little while. I didn't know what to do with it. And since then, I've come to know it's going to happen. It's still going to happen. We just don't have a certainty on the date, and that's okay.
Right. And other than those within my smallest circle, I've never discussed dates. I have a handful of friends and people on my board that I have surmised that there might be dates. I thought at the earliest, I knew it was, since my NDE, I first saw that. And then the first time I remember that they showed me the specifics as far as certain neighborhoods and the weather and all that I remember where I got kind of close-up views. The first time I saw that was like the fall of 2013 that I recall. And so I saw it in vision several times before I actually went public and telling anybody that. So I knew with the sequence of events what to look for, roughly speaking. They show me sequence of events. I do get dates on quite a few things. I have never been given a date on the Wasatch earthquake specifically. I've been shown times and seasons. I've been shown surrounding events or dominoes that will fall before and after, and sometimes during. I have asked for a date on that earthquake, and what I'm being told is essentially they're not going to give it to me because they know I would want to tell people, and the Lord doesn't tell us anything that's not good for us, and so He's holding that back. And so when I ruffled some feathers at that interview with Brian Hyde, because one of the first things I said in the beginning, and I was prompted to say it very specifically, so much so that it caught me off guard because I did not expect to say it, but someone from the other side, John, said to say this. Now, some people have a hard time that I would even claim that I have guidance from someone on the other side or that I hear voices. They will, for that alone, they will want to stone me for saying, one, either I'm a false prophet or pretending to be a prophet, and others will say she's just flat out crazy because she's admitting she's hearing voices. I want to be very clear that there are different ways that we receive revelation. And when I first got on that radio show and Brian turned the conversation over to me, the first thing I heard was Julie, and I heard my name. Before you go into conversation with the Wasatch, you need to let them know that the Lord does give dates. And then while on the phone, opened in vision, I was reminded of Samuel the Lamanite and how he was specifically given a date and told that the Savior would come at a certain time. He testified of that for 5 years. And just before they were going to put all of the believers to death, he pled with the Lord again, after having pled for 5 years many times. He pled with the Lord again, and the Lord said, "Fear not, for I come tomorrow." And that's exactly what happened. And because they opened that vision up to me again, and I said, I believe, or I think I said, I want to be very clear that the Lord does give dates. But I didn't qualify it. I never said He's given me a date on the earthquake. My energy was of such that it was very immediate, it was very urgent, and the words were then given, the earthquake is imminent. And so the combination of that phrase combined with imminent, and then really what people were doing on the internet, they were making up all kinds of things that I've said. They're trying to say that I posted things on different forums that I hadn't. People don't want to believe this, but there are people out there pretending to be me, I have found. Why they'd want to pretend to be me, I don't have any idea. If they knew my life, they would not want my life. I don't know why they want to pretend that they're me. They're pretending on avatars online, and they're going to increasingly do that. They will have imitations of Julie Rowe. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But they've done it already, and we haven't seen anything yet. So there were things that people said, they claimed that I said, I never did say. But out of my own words, I will own that I did say the Lord does give dates. He gave me the dates for every speaking engagement I had. He gave me the dates sometimes for conversations I needed to have with certain people. He's given me dates for when I need to travel to certain locations and work on the relief funds. But He has never given me a date for the earthquake. And so, and I never claimed such, did I?
No. Well, and I'm just speaking from my own experience here. I heard some people take that word you used, imminent, and put their own time scales on it. Like some people mentioned that it would be 3 days. See, it didn't happen within 3 days, so she was wrong.
Right.
And it's just, we put our own timelines on it, and so.
But it's so funny because, see, in the eternities, when we're not on Earth in a linear time frame, time is not kept the same way at all in the heavens. like not even close. And so it's really silly of us to try to put a time on the definition of a word, imminent, when that's not even, I mean, that's just the best word I could come up with that was given to me. Say imminent. And I heard imminent more than once. And I had never said imminent before on any radio show. And that was purposeful. I think the Lord did want to get a message out, and he wanted people to be urgent, and he wanted people to be serious about the message, and he wanted to see what people were going to do, where their hearts were, and what they were going to do with the message when he said to them imminent. And I even said in that broadcast, that could be a day, it could be next week, it could be next month, it could be next year. But it is imminent. And here we are a year later, and it hasn't happened yet. But I still say to you, it's not only imminent, it's right around the corner. And for all I know, by the time we air this podcast, it may have already happened, Eric.
Well, time will tell. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, imminent, if the world is 7,000 years old or it's had man on it for 7,000 years, what's a day, a week, or a year, right?
That's pretty imminent to me. And I do know with what's going on in the world, politically speaking, internationally and nationally and in our communities, and other natural disasters and things going on around the world, that they have shown me and continue to show me that we are not any less imminent than it was a year ago. In fact, it's right around the corner. It is soon, and I don't know how soon, but that urgency hasn't gone away for me. I have always felt like it was a spring earthquake. I did for a while think maybe I'd gotten it wrong, and maybe we were going to have it in November, because I was feeling so much urgency last November, and I was having a lot of anxiety about the fact that so many people had rejected my message or had decided not to believe that I was a true messenger anymore because the earthquake hadn't happened. And that is the reason I did that second Brian Hyde interview in November with Brian, because when you see people of faith struggling in their faith or losing faith, it's discouraging. And I didn't want to be responsible for that. I wanted to let people know that my voice is still out there. I still stand by this message. I've seen what I've seen. I'm not backing down from that. And this isn't a pride thing. This isn't an ego thing. This is, I'm convinced, because Christ gave me those messages, and he continues to give those messages to me, that I can't sleep at night if I'm not doing everything I can to warn my brothers and sisters, because that's how serious stuff is coming to this planet. And it starts with the Wasatch Wakeup. Wasatch Wakeup. And again, I'm not getting this on my own, and I'm going to get in trouble from people. And when I say trouble, I mean they're going to give me grief for it. Every time I speak out like this, I get hate mail and things circulate on the internet. But I am to the point, Eric, and you and I have talked about this, I can't care about that. I don't care what people say anymore. It hurts my heart, but it will not stop me, and it will not shut me up.
That's great.
And that is because I know who I work for. And when you know who you work for, and in this case, I'm going to be very clear that I work for the Lord, as in Jesus Christ. When you know who you work for, and you know he has your back, and you know he's protecting you, and you know you're being shielded from so much, and you know that even though, as an imperfect person like I am, and anyone who knows me, those that are closest to me know how imperfect I am more than those that are not, his pattern is to choose imperfect people. His pattern is not to choose perfect people. If I were perfect, I wouldn't be on the planet anymore. But he's giving me an opportunity to learn and to grow just like he is everybody else. And I am so thankful for that. It's very humbling. I just want to be worthy of his word, worthy of his message, and worthy of returning home to the Savior that I love and to my Father in heaven. And if I've done that, at the end of the day, my life is a success. And I encourage that with anybody, Eric, like
Yeah.
At some point in time in our lives, we have to look in the mirror and say, who do I work for? Whose side am I on? And if I'm truly on the Lord's side, then what am I willing to do to stand for Christ? And many of us are going to be called to do some very, very difficult things. And if I can be one face in the crowd and one voice that stands and says, I'll do whatever he asks me to do, then maybe others will be willing to do the same.
That's great. Well, I know that your stance has helped me and a lot of others make the same kind of stance and choose the side they're on. So, Julie, I want to ask you about the doctrinal background or scriptural background, like the purpose of the Wasatch Wakeup as you see it, or as you've been instructed.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great question, Eric, because, again, this is not coming from me. I am not creative enough to come up with this. I am not, by no means am I a brilliant person. I've been blessed with a sharp mind that has often been inflicted with terrible pain and anguish from those who would like to injure from the other side and causing health issues and other things. So again, anybody that knows me and knows everything from my health history to my family background would understand the context in which I'm giving here. I did not come up with this on my own. You cannot make this stuff up. And I really would have to be 100% completely crazy, or I have to speak the truth, because it's one or the other. I don't think there's a lot of gray area there in understanding my message, which is essentially that the Lord has a plan for us, and he wants us to be happy, and we need to trust in his plan, and then we will find safety in that. And that's spiritually speaking as well as temporally speaking. The words Wasatch Wakeup and the meaning behind the Wasatch Wakeup, my understanding that I've been given in my NDEs, and I say NDEs because you and I both know we're writing about this in the 4th book. I've had more than one, and that's not something the public knows as of yet, but I've had several. And that's one of the other ways I can testify. It wasn't a one-time shot for me, folks. I've had several experiences, and I've gone through a lot of pain to get to this point. And to come to this level of understanding about Father's plan. And it has come through a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and heartache. And I'm grateful for the testimony I have. There are no shortcuts. And the understanding I have about the Wasatch Wakeup is it is the beginning of the tribulation spoken of in the book of Revelations and in Isaiah and other passages of Scripture. It opens the doors and the portals to the Wasatch and to other parts. It is essentially the first domino or the tipping point of the tribulations. And from then on, we have 7 years. 7 years of tribulations specifically spoken of in Revelations by John.
Great.
Does that do it?
I think that covers it. I mean, but now why do you think the Lord, so like what's going to happen? Are people going to be hurt? Are buildings going to be destroyed? And
Absolutely.
And if so, why does the Lord allow this to happen?
Absolutely. I see several deaths. I see thousands of people displaced in this first earthquake, and he allows it because upon his housetops we will cleanse his church first. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And the second thing is he is a God of tender love and mercy, and when he sees his children not paying attention, not respecting him, not obeying his laws and covenants and his guidelines that he's given us for our safety and our protection, and when they have made covenants to be able to progress in this world and beyond, and they are not fulfilling their covenants or they are not listening to the law of the Lord, then he takes it upon himself, as prophesied thousands of years ago because he foresaw this day, then he has a plan for that. And the plan is that he's going to wake people up. And often we don't listen to the Lord until we're humbled. And that's a sad fact about human nature. And that isn't to say that everyone who's going to be injured or have something negative affect in the Wasatch Front or in any other natural disaster or anything else did something wrong. There are plenty of people who are very innocent, who are not guilty of anything, who are just good people, but they must endure trials and suffering for their own learning and growth on an eternal path. And I look at it similar to how I look at the days of Noah. In the days of Noah, the Lord flooded the earth with living water. That's what he did. He cleansed the earth because the earth had gotten so wicked that it was more of a tender mercy for him to send them to the other side of the veil and stop them from their own condemnation than it was for him to leave them alive and let them continue to go down the path of darkness.
That's interesting.
And life goes on the other side of the veil. It's not like you die and you no longer exist. You go to the other side of the veil and keep on in your progression. You're just not going to be damned anymore for having a body and doing things in that body that he knows are not healthy for you. I don't know. Does that answer it?
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Well, there's another, while we're talking about like the physical things, earthquakes and things, there's a scripture in Revelation chapter 6, verses 12 through 17. And in short, it says, "And I beheld when we had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black and the moon became blood." He's talking about a really big earthquake there. Is that the same as the Wasatch, or what is that one, do you think?
Well, I'd have to go back and read those passages to know the full context, because I'm not recalling, in all honesty, right now, the order of that in which John wrote it. But my understanding is this, we've got earthquakes going around all over the place, all over the planet, that are huge. But this one in the Wasatch signifies the first domino of the tribulations beginning as we enter into a new dispensation. And the largest earthquake in the Wasatch will come. It'll be a 9 to 9.5 to even a 10 off the Richter scale. And that'll happen also centered in Utah, in the Salt Lake Valley, splintering out into the rest of Utah. That one does not happen until shortly before around the time, it's right after actually, when the foreign troops come to the United States. I see that as a fall earthquake. This one I see as a spring earthquake, although it could be at a different time of the year. But it seems to look, in the scenes that I've been shown, it seems to look like it's in spring because, and I'm talking about the Wasatch earthquake, Wasatch Wakeup earthquake. That one has spring green grass. It's got fresh snow. I was told in the radio show to tell people that the weather is unseasonably warm with an unexpected cold front that comes in, an unexpected cold front that comes in for that Wasatch Wakeup. And I was even given the times that the first shakes would happen while it was dark, between 4 and 4:30. On one night vision I had, I saw on a clock 4:14 a.m. 4:13, and then the clock switched to 4:14. It was that specific in the night vision. And then the aftershocks lasting until 6 or 6:30 in the morning before people come out of their houses. And so there's specific things on my blog that I talk about, which are going to be, my understanding, what leads to so much of a hoopla around my story and why it goes viral throughout the world in media and television and in the written word and the spoken word, because I have given these details in a way that no one else has. And people have a buzz about that. They're perplexed, they're curious, they're frustrated. Some of them are very angry. And they're scared, and I think that's where a lot of it comes from, is people are scared about who I am. They don't know me. They don't know how I can know these things. They don't know them themselves. Some people are jealous because they don't. And there's a lot of emotions that go with my story and why somebody would know these things or have these gifts when they themselves don't have them. I can't answer that for them other than say I am who I am, and I'm not going to hide from it anymore. The big earthquake, we fast forward, there's going to be aftershocks. When you have an earthquake that's 6.6 to a 7 epicenter in Salt Lake at the University of Utah, that's what I see in Wasatch Wakeup. And we have an earthquake that big, you have to expect aftershocks, right? I mean, have you ever heard an earthquake that size without smaller earthquakes after?
Those are big. Those are the kind that usually knock things off walls and cause structural damage, yeah.
Right. Especially some of those brick buildings that are older, little brick houses and things that were not structurally built for an earthquake. And like at Thanksgiving Point and other places, all along I-15 in the Wasatch Corridor there, where they have, I can't tell you how many buildings have been made out of glass, 4 to 10-story buildings, most of them between 4 and 6 stories. Glass buildings have been built in the last 5 years in the Wasatch. Every time I go back, which has been a couple of times a year in the last 5 years, I cannot believe that they are building those things.
And do you see, as you drive past them, do you see specific buildings and kind of their condition? Yeah.
Yes. The way it works with my brain and the visions that I have is I will see, as if it's in real time, like I'm there experiencing it, the glass breaking right in front of me. The road is breaking up. And that does play tricks in the mind. Try driving down I-15, having a conversation with somebody and then having a vision open up to you where you see people falling into a crevice. I have to actively work at staying in present time. I have grounding techniques that I do. Anybody else who experiences this, and there are several people on this planet that do, they just don't tell anybody because they're afraid that someone will think they're crazy.
Right.
But when you experience gifts like this, there's different techniques that I've learned, that I've been taught how to do, to make sure I stay centered, to make sure I stay grounded, if you will.
So
And
you're not actually seeking those experiences. They just kind of happen?
no, they just come. They just come. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen because I'm in a car with somebody and somebody asks me a question, and all of a sudden will open up to me, and I'm shown and I can give an answer. And often it catches me off guard. It catches me off guard less than it used to, because I understand what's happening a lot better now than when I was 6. But I came into the world like this. I've dealt with this my whole life, and sometimes it plays out like a live video feed almost. Other times it's a deja vu experience. Less and less of it's deja vu, so much as just a live vision, or I will see something in advance and it'll come to fruition. But I don't always have a time frame for when that's going to happen. I have dreams and visions that I had a decade ago that are just now coming to fruition. And I didn't know 10 years ago that they were going to happen when I was 44. I just had them. I had no context for it, and I just knew that it was going to happen someday. And in some cases, I don't know all the time if it will happen until it actually happens, and then I go, wow, that was literal. Sometimes I think I'm still trying to discern the things that they're teaching me that are just figurative, and other times it's very clear that it's literal, that it's something that's really going to happen. And so when it comes to things like the earthquakes, after this Wasatch earthquake, there will be aftershocks that same day, and a few days later, and a few weeks later, and some of those earthquakes are going to be decent size. You're going to have at least a 3.5 to a 4, maybe even a 5 after that, in aftershocks in the coming year following the Wasatch earthquake. And then when that big one happens, which I have confirmed through the Spirit, I've seen it enough. The first time I saw that in vision, I was a kid, but the first time I understood what it was, and they made clear to me it was in Salt Lake in the Wasatch and Utah County, I was a junior in high school. I'm 44 years old now. I was 16 as a junior in high school, and I was almost 17 the first time I saw that. And I didn't live in Utah. I lived in Northern Virginia near Washington, D.C., and so it's not like I was from there or had a context for why I would be having an earthquake about Utah. And it was set in such a scene that I saw multiple temples that are now all built. Every single one of the temples that I saw in 1990 now exist in Utah. How many years ago was that, right?
That's cool.
So you can imagine how many times they've shown those scenes to me and variations of different scenarios in just that really big earthquake. It's that important. And whatever my mission is and whatever the Lord wants me to do, He started making it clear to me at the age of 16 and 17 years old. That's a lot of training I've had, Eric.
Yeah.
And you don't mistake scenes like that. When you're seeing at that point, that big earthquake, thousands of people killed and running in horror because they were not prepared, or they were caught off guard because they were not listening to the prophet, or they were not listening to this message or another message where they could have been spared.
Yeah.
And there's the reason I'm as enthusiastic or emphatic about this message as I am, because this has been more of my life than not.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen that big earthquake. I don't know. I've seen that big earthquake probably once a week for 20-something years, 25
really?
years.
What about the Wasatch? How many times would you say you've seen that?
For a long time, for several years through my late teens, early 20s, and even until I was 31, when I would see that first earthquake, I thought it was the same earthquake. I wasn't able to discern that it was two different earthquakes for a long time. And then when I had my NDE, they made it very clear this is two separate earthquakes. So I I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. I haven't seen the Wasatch Wakeup for a long time. I saw the big one. I can tell you in the last 3 years how many times I've seen it. In the last 3 years, I've seen that Wasatch Wakeup, variations of it, anywhere from once or twice a week to 5 times a week. I've seen that Wasatch Wakeup. As far as scenes from the Wasatch Wakeup, and that happens in both night vision and day vision, more in day vision now, and I believe that's because for my mission to stay motivated, to have the courage to do what I'm doing, to be bold, not be afraid, and to be compelled, the Lord continues to show it to me because it has a very serious effect on me. It has a very motivating effect on me, and it affects my heart energy to the point that I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to save as many people and to help wake up as many people as possible, even if it just means they've got a flashlight and a pair of shoes by their bed, and they've taken the mirrors off their walls that are going to hit them on the head and knock them out. I can't save everybody. That's not my job. We already have a Savior. And if somebody's going to die, then that's the plan, and they're supposed to go to their side. If someone's going to get hurt, they're going to get hurt. But through my actions, I hope that people will at least be aware and hear more than anything. No matter what happens to you, God loves you. He loves you.
Let me ask you another quick question, Julie, just with regard to the timing or at least the sequence of those events. So you see the Wasatch Wakeup as potentially a spring event, and then do you see the big one in the same year, or do you see it like a year later?
No, and I know the big one's definitely not in 2017. The earliest that big earthquake, and I mean the big one that we're talking about, of being like a 9, 9.5, 10 off the Richter scale is what they report. Then, we're looking at that at the very earliest, fall of 2018, at the very earliest. So people don't need to worry that it's this year. But the thing is people in America have not lived through a 6.5 or a 7. They don't have context. There is no one on this planet that lives in America while living in America that has ever gone through that. There are people that have gone through earthquakes, that are smaller than that, or earthquakes that are that large while living or visiting other countries. But on American soil, there has not been a 7 in the last 100 years that I know of, right? So so it's going to come across like the big one. There will be headlines. People will probably even make T-shirts saying, "I survived the big one." Mm-hmm. And that's because to them, a 7 is big, but they haven't lived through a 9.
That's interesting. Julie, as you were talking about being a younger girl and having dreams and visions and things, you kind of reminded me of an interview where you told me some stories when you were younger. I think it'd be a fun podcast to talk about some of the natural events you saw as a girl. What do you think?
I think that'd be great. We can talk about Mount Rainier and Helens and some of the other volcanoes, Kilauea, talk about Hurricane Eva, some of that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think that'd be great. Yeah, we've got a little of that in the book coming out on my biography that Eric's just written with me called Gifted for a Purpose. Again, we don't know the release date on that, but it is at the publisher now going through edit review. So we talked about some of that, but we couldn't really do it justice in the book, could we?
No. So
yeah, I think that'd be fun. Let's do that. Let's plan a podcast with that. That sounds good.
That'd be good.
I have a lot of energy, I could clear getting some of that stuff out of my head.
Yeah. Well, hey, we've pretty well covered this topic. Do you want to wrap this up? Anything else you want to say on anything earthquake related?
I think we could talk about more earthquakes around the world later, do another podcast related to earthquakes around the world that I've seen, that we've experienced, the impact that earthquakes have had on me, but we'll do that for another podcast. Some of the, people will think I'm a freak, but I kind of enjoy telling them about one of the ways that I know earthquakes are happening and how there have been times when I've felt earthquakes clear across the planet. That'd be kind of a cool podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or, so some of the earthquakes we've had, some earthquakes that are coming, like in the Ring of Fire, talk more about those, everything from Alaska on down to California, some of the land masses and how they'll be affected, talk about the Nuremberg grid. There's a lot of confusion. I just got another email yesterday with a lady asking me, is the big earthquake the Wasatch Wakeup, or is there another one? Is the big earthquake that I hear about the Madrid fault line? And I think we should do a podcast later specifically outlining and differentiating for people what those earthquakes are. We touched on it today, but I'd like to actually explain a little bit more about that and how it's going to break up the continent and all that on another podcast.
That sounds good.
So, I think this is good for today. I don't know what the next podcast will be because we haven't gotten that far yet, but hopefully you guys will come back and visit our channel again, and we'll go from there. Again, I don't know the date on this earthquake, but what I am being told now, the verbiage given to me, is it's right around the corner. Right around the corner, and the visual that comes with that is if you're walking on a street corner and you are about to turn the corner. So if we were right around the corner, we were at the corner of the street. That's all, folks.
See you next time.